At the outbreak of war, there were only 360,000 Jews in this country. And yet by the end of the war, 60,000 men and women had served.
I was picked to go on to be an ABC operator, an airborne cigar operator, having a knowledge of the German language which was required to interfere with the German night fighter controllers. He was transmitting instructions to the fighters, but we blacked them out by transmitting through the engines. Well, on the 23rd of July, we were briefed to go to a raid on the naval base at Kiel in Germany. Immediately, searchlights caught us. The anti-aircraft started up, and there we were. The shrapnel was coming through our aircraft. The shrapnel caught two engines, which caught fire. Our navigator, Stam, he planned a route for us to get back over the North Sea on two engines, and by using the sextant. And fortunately, we were able to arrive back at Ludford Magna. Now, we were 2 hours late, and we'd practically run out of fuel. Our hydraulic units had emptied. And the skipper, Eric, said, "Right, boys, you're going to have to urinate into the tanks so that we can get down where the engines won't pack up on us."
Our orders were to go on a patrol with 2 other glider pilots and a captain in the South Staffs. We'd got about a quarter of a mile, maybe a bit more. When we looked, everywhere we looked were German soldiers. We were completely surrounded. We dived into a church, and then we dived up the church. We went up a winding staircase. At the end was a small rectangular window. We opened this very slowly, and everywhere we looked were German soldiers. So we opened fire. When we were shooting, we did not intentionally shoot to kill. We aimed to wound, because by killing a man, you take 1 man out of action. But by wounding him, you take 3 men out of action. The man you've wounded, and the 2 men needed to take him to an aid post. At the end of the 3rd day, the captain who was with us was shot in the stomach. He quite rightly decided to surrender and give himself to get medical attention. My guess is he was in shock, because he told the Germans there are 3 more British soldiers up there. We went down with our hands up. We told the Germans in schoolboy German we hadn't eaten for 3 days, and within 5 minutes a plate of food was provided for each of us. And then it was off to an interrogation centre on the other side of the Rhine, across the bridge. The prisoner of war camp was fairly newly built. It was very modern. It was virtually escape-proof. There was only about 600 or 700 prisoners in the camp in total. All escape attempts were shelved. The escape committee banned them. We stayed there from end of September to the beginning of October, and then the forced march. Allied forces were advancing at very high speed. And the Germans didn't want us to be freed because we were all pilots or aircrew. And so they sent us on a march. This was 83 miles to be covered in 17 days on starvation rations at -30°C. It was a little nippy, to put it mildly. When the Red Army released the camp, the guards had fled. The following day, I was flown back to the UK. But before I got back, I stole the photograph of myself that had been taken in the interrogation centre.
Life on the ship, for the photographers, we had the open house to go anywhere on the vessel, so we had the freedom of the ship. When you go into action, all the sections below water level get sealed off, the hatches get closed down, so you couldn't get out if you wanted to. So if there was a dive bombing attack, we would stay down in the photographic section for safety. And if it was a torpedo attack, we would want to get out. The first night we were told we're going into action when it was on the ship. It was a lovely sunset, and the captain was on the tannoy throughout the ship. We're going to action in the morning. We might have some aircraft attacking us, we're not quite certain. And just be ready for it tomorrow. It would be early in the morning. So from 5 o'clock in the morning, we could have to be called to action stations. And at that time in the evening, when the sun was set, I can see the picture now, the sun was set low and the water was lovely and smooth. And I personally was thinking of home. Your thoughts go to your family. I don't know why. You know, as a youngster, you can be more brave than you are when you're older. But that evening I was very frightened, and I think most of the people on board were, my colleagues were the same. Anyway, the morning came and there was no action to start with, and then the action did start. And when the Orkan guns start opening up all the time, and then planes were coming in, it's quite frightening, and a lot of smoke and everything. And you don't know where you're turning, you know, and things are happening. All of a sudden we had an aircraft coming in to attack, and we got hit on the stern, a whole lot of smoke, and some of the guns were put out of action, and part of the deck was damaged. And I was scared, and everybody was scared.
We were asked if we would like to visit Hiroshima, and obviously we all said yes. And the devastation was quite incredible. I mean, in every direction. I've got photographs, of course, that I took there. And people were walking around with these horrendous radiation burns. Problem was there was no known cure because no atom bombs had never been used before. We had, for some time, we had been told there was a forced labour camp in the area for Jews, but we had no idea, of course, that we were going to find anything like Boston. The first impression was the smell, which was terrible, and this was a result of hundreds, if not thousands, of bodies lying around on the ground. It was ghastly. I can't begin to explain it to you.
As we drove, I made inquiries and I found that Bergen-Belsen was the... and I walked into there and, well, I was just shattered. There was a huge hole and there were just bodies lying there, undressed or with just a cloth over them, women and men.
Well, by the time I got there, at the beginning of 1947, there was already a tremendous improvement. The people from the Jewish Relief Unit, although whether they had been trained or I don't know, but they helped. We could interject, we could use words, but very few of the Jewish Relief Unit spoke Yiddish or German. They spoke English. I came there, I spoke both. I heard a female voice say, "Herbert, what are you doing here?" Turned out to be two schoolmates of mine from Germany, twin sisters. Not only twin sisters, but also two of the people that had been left behind by our transport in Poland. So we had a lot to talk about.
It was a specific day for remembrance. It was organised by Ajax. We chartered a plane. There were thousands of people there,
survivors, many, many Americans, and they thanked us for giving them back their lives and their freedom. And we all lit yurtsite candles. It was a very draining day, actually, emotionally. And the birds were singing, and I remember saying there were no birds singing in 1945 when we liberated the camp.